stuff that I could speak to verbally that some of their employees didn't have that exposure to. They were like, "Holy crap, we need to get you over here." Um, I sat in my role for maybe a year. It got to be like very clear that they wanted me doing something else. I got
Mm-hmm.
promoted after a year just because they saw, I guess, value in promoting me. But before I left, I was asked to lead a team of 12 ops managers, and I declined it. It was just a lot of travel and not really worth it financially.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. And did they have any performance recognition things going on here, like awards or anything like that?
Blue Grace, no. I mean, they had a President's Club. I didn't ever make President's Club, but that was really the only thing. They didn't have like employee awards or recognitions or things like that.
All right. Okay. No worries. Let's see. So, when you were a manager here, were you leading a team?
No, I was asked to, and I didn't. I didn't really have a desire to do that.
All right, but you do now, right?
Yes. Like I would like to, but what they wanted me to do wasn't really strategic. It was more babysitting operations managers basically who weren't really in the traditional sense of operations managers. They were kind of customer support, if we're going to be candid about it. So they provided
Right.
tactical support on accounts, but I didn't really want to babysit 10 of them for, $50,000 a year. It just didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, anything else that you were doing from a management point of view?
Um, yeah, a lot of team building and stuff like that. Dustin, who was my immediate supervisor, didn't really have any experience with managing people or didn't have much. So I did a lot of stuff for him, like on his behalf. I held a lot of meetings. I did like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
coaching. A lot of the interns and stuff that came in who were new, again, they had a high turnover. So, some of that was kind of working with the people that stayed and coaching them. Like on working for a hyper growth company, people were like, "Hey, why aren't there processes for this or that or everything else?" And kind of having to explain to them, like, "Look, we're building that. Like it doesn't exist yet, but stay
Mm-hmm.
tuned. We're working on it." So some of that was delegated off to me. Pulling reports and providing feedback and stuff to make certain decisions was kind of handed off to me and delegated to me. But
All right. So, these trainings and the team building activities that you were doing, did they improve maybe the team performance?
yeah, big time. It got to a point we did have a huge morale problem, and we had an attrition problem for a while, and there was really sort of a top-down power imbalance. It's kind of interesting the way that panned out, and
Mm-hmm.
finally it got to a point where it came down to me, and I had to speak on it, and was like, these people, kind of hate each other. We need to do like a regional team building event, get everybody out of the office and get them to actually know one another a little bit, and so I did help with the regional team building things. Like we went and took these guys to Top Golf. um we would do stuff in the office where, exercises where they would have to introduce themselves and talk about themselves and their interests and things like that. And even I think around Valentine's Day we did something where you had to write something nice about one other person on your team, basically, or everybody on your team, one nice thing about everybody on your team, and then actually share that with them. Stuff like that, just to keep everybody cohesive and working together, and moving
Mm-hmm.
forward, basically. But yeah.
And did this impact the turnover rate? You said that it was high.
Yeah, it did get significantly better, and now things have mostly stabilized. I kind of still keep a track, keep an eye on it, just because I know people that work there and stuff, and the department is pretty well built out now, and it's turning and burning. It's working. So
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, nice. Um, and these trainings that you were conducting, I'm sorry, these were any of these on sales?
some some of it was in sales, some of it was in general knowledge. So I would do things like I put together a OneNote of just industry terms, sales processes, just kind of made things simple to understand for layman's for training purposes and stuff so that they could actually see um, what is the difference between XML, EDI, and APIs? What is a transportation management system? What is ERP integration? What data is that actually capturing? What kind of equipment are they using out in the field? I put together some of that training material. Bobby, the CEO, was never really particularly big on training. I guess they've reinvested in that now. It sounds like they've actually put together some internal resources again. They eliminated those resources a couple of years ago, and it sounds like they're building that again.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of the training on the systems, actually using the CRM, some of the processes internally. Again, a lot of these kids that came to work for us were interns. They didn't really have any of that experience. They'd never worked with a CRM or an ERP system or pulled any kind of reporting, that sort of stuff. So I would, generally, I was always a good resource for showing those guys what to do and to do it the right way without making, clerical mistakes or screwing up data samples, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, perfect. Um, all right, so can you tell me a little bit about the tools that you were using here?
As far as like actual IT tools,
Yeah, anything.
yeah, I've got exposure to SAP, Citrix, Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
um, some homegrown ad hoc reporting systems, a homegrown CRM. I've had a
Mm-hmm.
pick your payroll tool. I've used it. So ADP, I've used Concur, Paycom, Dayforce, you name it, I've probably used it. I've got
Mm-hmm.
really good across the Microsoft Office suite. I can pretty much use all of them and use them with a pretty good level of proficiency. If you give me a branding guide and tell me I need to create a PowerPoint that follows a branding guide, I can do that kind of stuff. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with Excel. A lot of what I did when I was at Tech Data was business analytics. It was actually real strategic account management, going after serviceable available market, working with companies for enablement strategies and things like that. I was more heavily involved in QBRs and things internally and externally with our customers and things like that. So a lot of what I did was pulling a couple years worth of customer data out of SAP and extracting that and going through and scrubbing data and looking at business trends and putting that in dashboards and comparing them with other dashboards and then trying to put together, business strategies that aligned with those customers and what it was that they were doing. Are they a managed service provider? Are they a retailer? They're trying to stand up a Cisco practice. How do I enable that? That
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. So I've got some pretty good analytical skills there as well. I've used a lot of those different types of tools. So Tableau, Clipfolio, just BI dashboards and things I've had some exposure to. And then a
Mm-hmm.
lot of configurator tools. So a lot of vendors like HP, Cisco, Lenovo. Those guys actually have like server building configurator tools. HP has one called Watson. They have one called iQuote. They've got one for um, peripheral systems for printers and things like that, or even for like POS systems, notebooks, computers, custom small servers and stuff. For the most part, I can use all of them. I can use Commerce Workspace. I can use all those different tools. So I've had a lot of exposure to those specific types of tools as well. Um,
All right.
and then your usual Salesforce and those kinds of things as well.
Perfect. So you talked a little bit about data analysis and visualization and reporting and these dashboards that you were using. Were you able to develop any actionable insights from these?
Absolutely. Um, so not just some of it was strategy, some of it was even things like profit modeling. So one of the first things I do one of the first things I did when I came into that role at Tech Data was I pulled the data on all my customers that I was given. They said, hey, here's your account base. Just know these are very high risk accounts. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot lose them. They're people who have threatened the business. Um, we need to actually go through a lot of these and probably look at things not SLA in particular, because that costs money. We don't want to make this any less profitable than it is. But we need to go through this because there's some business in here that looks like it was poorly negotiated. We've got slippage. We don't know what's going on, why we're losing business. Is this that their sales are flat? Is this because they replaced this vendor with another vendor on their line card? They just chose Dell over HP. So the first thing that I did was dive into that. A lot of that, there were some very telling things. The first thing was I took a handful of accounts and said, no, I'm going to send this over to our profit team and do some profit modeling and figure out why the hell this is cost minus. What are we losing money on? What's going on with this? And then some of it was enablement. So, there were customers that I would have QBRs with. There were internal QBRs that I had to go to. A lot of the times I would go on behalf of my manager or my director for skip levels, or not for skip levels, excuse me, for forecast meetings. Tech Data is a publicly traded company. It's a Fortune 100 company. So that was kind of a big deal to go sit in there with, Mark McClure, who's their senior vice president of sales, and Jeff English, who's their senior director of VAR sales, and, all the guys that bubble up to the CEO and the CFO. And sit in there and then have to speak to those metrics and those, really not even KPIs. Those KPIs are small, measurable kind of metrics. These are really more like OKRs. They're objectives and key results. So actually going and speaking to, what's going on with this and really how that kind of affects our bottom line, and then potentially that obviously affects shareholders. So, where are we tracking from a profitability standpoint? Where are we tracking from a revenue standpoint? Do we have the pipeline to actually support those deals? Can we, is there anything else that we can bring in? How do we enable this so that, next year something doesn't come and bite us on the ass if we lose, a piece of business that, is significant, that sort of thing.
All right, perfect. So, anything else that you want to add to this role? Any other initiatives that were significant or driving growth? Anything?
With regards to Blue Grace, no, I guess.
All right, and I think we've talked about the representative and manager roles like combined, right? Would it be okay if I combine them in the resume then?
If we combined what now?
If the business development representative and manager roles are combined in the resume, would that be okay?
I don't mind if it's combined as long as it's noted that it was like a promotion. If it condenses it and takes up less space on the resume, that's fine. But I did want it noted that it wasn't like a lateral move, that it was a vertical.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right. And the enterprise development representative role, do you want to talk about that separately?
I kind of touched on it.
Yeah.
It was a mid-market initiative. We can touch on it, but there's not much there.
All right. So let's just talk a little bit about this. And this was when you actually joined the company. So tell me what your key responsibilities were as the enterprise development representative.
That was after I was working with the enterprise development representative. No, that was when I first started with the company. Excuse me. So as an EDR, it was kind of be coachable. I'll be honest with you, they, like most hyper-growth companies, they kind of sold me on the dream about, hey, this company could be Google one day. So I took the job, and I was under the impression, that there was an actual enterprise team. There wasn't. We had to build it. So, this started with a couple sales guys internally who we just decided we're going to call you enterprise. Some connectors, basically guys who are going out prospecting, trying to make calls to find people to set appointments with them, and then putting together presentation materials and stuff for them to pitch, trying to earn large books of business and then onboard it. So the responsibilities kind of differed. When I first got there, it was like, hey, dial like a lunatic. That became more strategic. It became, leveraging LinkedIn to go out and actually try to find people based on their specific job function, their role, The real stakeholders for a while, they didn't even target C-level executives. We weren't targeting, VP level executives, people that had this in their job title. They were just trying to go and sell it to transportation managers who ultimately would get replaced by their product, ultimately fired and caught onto it. They know not to talk to people like us.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually started developing those sales processes, how we, went about finding those people that we needed to have those conversations with, how to go about having those conversations and really do sort of thorough discovery about their needs, do an actual needs assessment, and then approach this like a much more technical sale, typically with a longer sales cycle, 6 to 12 months, and then, work to optimize and make that more efficient, basically. So my
Mm-hmm.
roles were kind of, hey, just sit there and be coachable, and things will just kind of flesh out over time. So that
Mm-hmm.
went from just prospecting to just getting a bunch of stuff delegated to me. Hey, scrub this report, do this, do that, whatever else kind of thing. And that's kind of how I fell into that business development role.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. I think we did talk about this when we were talking about your business development role.